male image of black women is either you're the honeypot, or you're the sapphire, or you're the mammy. And if you don't fit into that category, then they don't know how to treat you. Exactly. So they mistreat you. And she's been on the receiving end of that. I've been on the receiving end of that. And so how then do we cut through all of this disinformation, because these portrayals are quite purposeful?
Yes.
In order to get a message out to people that they can have dignity, that their participation ought to include a component that improves their quality of life. The hip hop community has been mentioned here, but of course we understand the misogynistic images that are rife in the corporate-owned part of that culture that is not our culture. And so we as women, black women, have a particular challenge to overcome just to gain credibility when we are confronted with these kinds of images on a daily basis. All you have to do is turn your television on or listen to the lyrics on your radio station, and there's this denigration. So we shouldn't be surprised if there's only 14 black women in the United States Congress. There ought to be more. We should be surprised that there's only 237 black women who are members of legislatures across our country. We've got to do a lot better job of building that infrastructure and utilizing opportunities like this one that take advantage of public assets. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was about the TV spectrum. Black Agenda Report has been writing about this, that there's a whole new band of TV stations that's going to become available, and where are we in the ownership of the ability to communicate with the community?
This is, I believe, a good point to segue into, given the undisputed reality of what Cynthia has said, but yet we have this new paradigm that has been introduced as a result of this current presidential campaign, and that is a post-racial America. Now, everybody here is sort of looking like, are you kidding? But indeed, this is a paradigm that is being pushed against all odds of reality here in this country, and especially abroad. It has been mouthed and promoted by one of the presidential candidates, a leading one, and but yet the realities are quite different. So I don't want to make my question convoluted, but I would like each of the panelists to respond to this paradigm of a post-racial America, and for it to be addressed within the context of, one, blacks, particularly women, earn less than their white counterparts, the stereotypical images that have not abated or diminished, but in fact appear to be on the rise. And of course, we have these images, Condoleezza Rice and everybody else talking, presenting this so-called reality as proof of a post-racial America. But how does this impact on you personally within your life as your work, your profession as a jurist? This reality, it's not commenting on a case. And how do you carry that forth in terms of the future and the young people who are, in fact, our tomorrow, the future of tomorrow? And how do you pull these dynamics together just in terms of your own personal experience in advancing that vision of tomorrow?
Nellie, could I say something before the jurors address us?
Oh, it's for all of the panelists.
Because you talk about, or they talk about, this new paradigm. I don't think of it as a paradigm. I think of it as a smokescreen. It's a big lie.
Well,
it's what
I
Hitler.
think so.
It's what Hitler said.
I think so.
If you tell the lie and make it, extreme enough, people will believe it. We talked earlier about racism being so pervasive in this country, being so pervasive that every white person, no matter what they say, has got to be a racist because they benefit from white privilege. That's what it is. That's what white supremacy is. It's
Absolutely.
White privilege. So that if we live in a racist society where only progressive people who say, I acknowledge that I'm racist, but like an alcoholic, I am a recovering racist. Well, in that kind of racist society, it's not possible to even talk, with any meaning about a post-racial society. We mustn't fall into that trap. And wherever I am, and when I hear people say, "Oh, it's this new millennium has come because the possibility of a black man. It means that there is no racism in this country." You just have to puncture the hole in it and let people see what it is.
Well, let's be clear. I'm not subscribing to it.
Oh, I know that you're not.
But the discussion that such a paradigm could be promoted in the face of undisputed racism and the viciousness and brutality of it, and for it to, in fact, but to be promulgated by the leading presidential candidate, and it suggests something on a level of desperation, conspiracy, whatever one wants. So I do think it is important to just put it out there, to dispute it, to talk about it, but it is part of the political discussion both here and abroad. And if we are talking about how we protect Cynthia, how we protect our young people, how we protect other progressive candidates, then we have to deal with and face head on the lies of these paradigms that are being promoted. So it is within that context that I introduce this, even with the absurdity of it, but in respectable circles and all the news that's not fit to print newspaper. In fact, these are issues that are being discussed and promoted in a very serious way, particularly in creating a very different vision and reality of life in the U.S. for people of color, for people of African descent, to the international community. And that indeed is very dangerous. And if we're dealing with the issue of protecting Cynthia and other progressive forces, then how do we talk about that and deal with it head on? So that's the context.
For a moment, I'd like to step out of the co-moderator's role and play the role of a panelist for a moment. I'd like to repeat something that I said at the John Henry Clark tribute at the Schomburg last Sunday. I pointed out that demographers tell us by the middle of the 21st century, people of European descent will be the minority in the United States. Brown, black, yellow, and red will be the new majority. So it is clear that the Trilateral Commission, the various conservative think tanks, have considered this long ago.
Yes.
And at Mach speed, they are trying to do something about it. How do we continue, I'm speaking there in the context of the controlling party, how do we continue to control the politics, the economics, and the culture of the United States when we are in the minority? Short of doing it as the Afrikaners did it with guns, they have to come up with some other device, and that some other device is the attempt to unglue the culture that holds black people together. Or, as Harold Cruz wrote in his book, the crisis of the Negro intellectual. Culture is the cementing principle that holds the economic and the political of a people together. So in attempting to continue their control, they have to destroy that glue that holds us together. And what is the preliminary foray? The preliminary foray in attempting to destroy that is to try to fool us that we are in a post-racial period. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
And, you know, on this note, I'd like to really, mention a couple of things. One, this program is being taped by WBAI 99.5 on the FM dial, a station that we have to support in every way we can, because it's really the only one on the block. And also, one of our guests in the audience, I'd like him just to come up and say a few words. Wallace Satrana, who's from Ghana, and he's the president of the African Chamber of Commerce, and he's really enjoying this program. Wallace?
Thank you very much, Josh. I would like to make a small correction. I'm the vice chairman of the African Chamber of Commerce. On my right here is my president and attorney, Mr. Seri.
Oh.
My question to the panelists, anybody can answer it, is how do we bridge the gap between United States and Africa in terms of economic growth? Because in the community we have small African businesses in the community, and you know, they seem to be stifling and not making any headway. So what can anybody on the panel, what can we do to, you know, grow that business in the community?
Well, I will start then. I subscribe to the view that as a person resident in the United States, I can't be free until Africa is free. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Africa, even the effort to do legitimate business in Africa is thwarted by a very small group of people who control every aspect of the economy on the continent. Now, there's the Corporate Council on Africa, which is headed by Maurice Templesman, which should not actually be that way, which is the gateway entity to do major business projects on the continent. Shouldn't be that way. The Southern African Development Fund, which was received funding through my first year in the United States Congress, also, again, headed by Maurice Templesman. Now, unfortunately, we have this small group of people who find it more conducive to do business by theft and by creation of so-called military factions than by real trade. And until these entities are punished, that's why I'm involved in litigation in Spain to punish corporations that are involved in human rights abuses, genocide, or any of the such, because the continent is rife with them, from gold and diamonds to tantalum to coltan to uranium, copper, all of the products that the natural resources, and of course the human resources as well, because these products are mined or produced in a way that contributes to child labor, slave labor, and the list goes on. We have our job cut out for us in terms of trying to deal with Africa on a level of respect. And there is the other thing that I would like to say is if the face of U.S. engagement on the continent is through U.S. corporations who are there basically to steal the resources backed by the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. And then you've got AFRICOM, yes, which is going to be positioned on the African continent. Look out, Africa. Yes. And this notion that that was put forward by Dick Morris and Bill Bennett, saying that race is no longer a factor in U.S. politics, the only thing I can say is that the Africans had better watch out, because if we don't take care of our business here in this country, you will be even put even more on the chopping block, and it's the lives, the blood that will be spilled.
And on that note, I would like to say this has been the Josh Walensky Show, and until next time, good night.
Good night.
I think so. I need some audience participation.